Welcome to I don't even know what edition this is. We are still struggling edition of Sharing Sox. I'm Southside Sox duty geezer Leigh Allan. With me, my son and West Coast correspondent Will. We're recording this on Friday the 23rd, which is after the Texas series, which was, I don't know what, the 43rd consecutive series lost to non AAA Central teams, and before Boston comes into town. I noticed that Boston is actually a favorite against Giolito on Friday night. Normally, home teams are given a huge bonus, and then you get the best of your pitchers, even though Lucas hasn't been totally lights out. You should be a very solid favorite, even with a team with a better record, but they're not. White Sox right now, 32 and 44, 12 games under 500 in fourth place. That's kind of what it is. Dakota says 75 and 87 will be the final tally, with a 2.3% chance of making the playoffs, and some 12 games behind Minnesota. 538 says even worse, 74 and 88. But they say an 8% chance of making the playoffs because they think Minnesota and Cleveland are even worse than Dakota thinks they'll be. We faced this, but on the AAA Central, I got to say they're 159 and 215. So as a division, would have the worst record in the league except for the A's.
Yeah, I think all those predictions are really generous. I don't see a world where we win 75 games right now. It's possible, but everything would have to change. And I just don't see anything
It's
really
the
changing.
Zach Remillard thing. He'll just come in and win every game with a
Hey,
keep on.
a shout out to Zach Remillard. Heck of a debut. Really, really cool. But other than that, there's not a lot to celebrate. I think it is a little bogus that Giolito's not favored at home tonight. Giolito is definitely a bright spot in what's been going on with this lackluster team. So I think that's a little bit of a cold
Well, the
blow
guy
from
who's the guy
Vegas.
who's pitching, Rayon Bello, pitching for Boston, has got an ERA around 2.2 or something. He's only pitched a few games. Fairly new to the major leagues. That's murder for the White Sox. Be best if he'd never been in the major leagues and was coming up from single A with a 9.4 ERA for Boston's point of view.
Right.
But I want some quick things here. 30th in the majors in on base percentage.
Oh, I had circled that stat. It was the first one I was going to bring up. 30th in on base percentage.
They've moved up to 29th in walks. Keep going back and forth with the Nationals, depending on any given game on any given day.
Impressive.
But for speed, they're 22nd in stolen bases. Batting average is 21st. OPS is 26th. But this, they've been talking Stoney and would be going like crazy in the booth, and they're going, homers. We haven't had enough homers. Well, we've got to have homers. Well, now they're right in the middle. 85 homers is exactly major league average, and it's done them no good. This last streak where they're just putting out of the park left and right, 9 consecutive solo home runs. And the ones on each end were 2. The only home run more than 2 was the grand slam by Berger, the walk-off grand slam, where all they needed to do was hit a medium fly ball.
Yep.
They didn't need it. The
Well,
fielding.
I think it's pretty easy to figure out why we're hitting solo home runs when we're 30th in on base percentage.
Yeah, nobody's on there. Fielding, the R-Tot, which is like Oozer, the range factors and all that, 27th. And defensive runs saved, 29th, according to Baseball Reference. Pitching, runs per game, 23rd, ERA plus 24th, FIP 25th, so it's not the field. And in giving away walks, the only team worse is the A's.
Wow.
So it's a universal collapse. It's not just, well, the pitching hasn't been so hot, or the hitters got to come around. It's everything.
Correct. Yeah. Everything. There is not a number to look at that feels good. There just isn't at this point. And yes, we're 6 games back of the Twins. That's
only 6 back because the Twins are at 500.
Seems like something you could overcome, but I just don't see, even if the Twins continue at their 500 pace and Cleveland is now,
I
uh,
think Cleveland's. I'm saying Cleveland now because they've had a
yeah,
lot of injuries, especially to pitchers. And when you survive, I mean, McKenzie's out again, and yet they come up forever and do these things. And some guys are starting to hit. Bell, who hadn't been hitting for I don't know the first 2 months, is starting to put it out of the park. Now, of course, Ramirez is tremendous. Some of the other Juan is improving. I think it's going to be Cleveland in the end.
I
But
think it's
that
going to
brings
be
us to
Cleveland by quite a lot, actually. I think Cleveland's going to end up running away with the division. I think none of these teams would make the playoffs if there wasn't a guaranteed
oh
spot
no.
at the top of the
Oh,
division.
speaking of playoffs, I've come up with a strategy for other teams.
Okay.
If you are in the wild card mix at the end of the year, which nobody in this division will be, but it could be Toronto, it could be the Yankees, Baltimore, Houston, or L.A. or Texas, whoever is any of it. If you're in the mix, it's boy, you can't make the play, you can't win the division. You're going to be a wild card. I would work in the last month. You can't do it, can't show it, but I would work in the last month. I would have the left-handed batters bat righty and the right-handed batters bat lefty, and the pitchers throw with their wrong hand to get the sixth seed. Because if you get the sixth seed, you'll be playing the winner of the AAA Central. All those other teams are tough. you know, you don't want, if you're the fifth seed, you got to play the four who's going to be a really good team, or vice versa. But if you're sixth, you get kind of a first round bye, and then you go to the two rather than the one. So as for right now, you play Texas instead of Tampa Bay.
I think
But
that's I mean, it's obviously way too early to be thinking about that if you're a team, but that is something to be thinking about. I think when you get to the end of the season, the 5 and 6 teams are going to be really trying to battle each other for sixth, because it would be way nicer to face Cleveland or Minnesota in that first series than it would be to face
well,
any of the
Minnesota
other
won a
teams.
playoff game. What is it, 2002 or something?
That's
That
true.
was
That's a
20
really
some
good point.
consecutive playoff games.
They have won a
Games.
playoff game
What series?
since
Games.
2000 games. Yeah, they have still not won a game. They are on that horrendous streak. That's another reason I think Cleveland is going to end up being the team. Minnesota just seems to have a mini curse going right now. Uh, yeah, it is. I mean, it's embarrassing. The AL Central is embarrassing. The only division even close to being as embarrassing is the NL Central, and there are at least teams in the NL Central that are fun to watch.
The
Uh,
Reds, I think they're still on the streak, right? 11 in a
yeah,
row. And then got this
Reds are
rookie
still
who
on the
is
streak.
phenomenal.
Ellie De
Um,
La Cruz, one of the most exciting guys to watch. Joey Votto coming back and homering in his first game back. The Reds are really exciting. The rest of the teams I don't really believe in, but the Reds could do something interesting
I think
here.
Milwaukee's just a little better and will end up on top in the end.
On paper, they should be, but they're certainly not proving to be at this point in
No,
time.
no, they
But the
struggle.
AL Central is an absolute joke. Kansas City should be embarrassed. The fact that the White Sox are behind Oakland in any categories, and I realize, we had a whole movie made in 2002 about on base percentage in the Oakland Athletics. Still not a good excuse to be behind them in on base percentage. This is a team now. Granted, this is an Oakland A's team that swept the Brewers in Milwaukee, so they might
It's a parent.
actually be.
I'm getting. Well, you froze there. That was
Uh,
an interesting thing. You kept
for,
talking, but your face froze.
oh, sorry about that. That happens sometimes. I get a little face stage fright and I freeze up a little bit. But it looks like we're back on track. Uh, Yeah, there's just no hope for this AL Central. I think whoever ends up winning it's out in the first round. Um, it's so
But
pathetic.
if the White Sox were to somehow do this, and I don't believe in a minute they could, they will fly that flag, AL Central champs 2023, and they'll brag, we won the division. We were division champs in 2020, and it's just pathetic. pathetic. Which brings us to what do you do? You know, uh, I was just today looking through other teams, places like Southside Sox with other teams are saying, here are the trade possibilities with the White Sox. Here's what we should trade with the White Sox. Here's what we should do with them. Lots of them are doing because they're presuming they'll get some. Giolito comes up first. Giolito was on some podcast where he said, "Oh no, I love Chicago. I want to stay." He hasn't said that all year, so he's setting up something there.
Well, and
I bet the
I mean,
Dodgers get Giolito. That's my bet. He's from Los Angeles. Uh,
yes, he went to high school just down the street from me. I, the talk around LA is very hopeful that we would get Giolito. Uh, Unfortunately, these prices go up, and Giolito's probably going to cost a pretty penny, but he is also just a rental, so he won't cost as much as, Dylan Cease's name has been in the conversation as well, but Dylan Cease is going to cost a fortune because he's under contract control. Most of the guys that other teams would find desirable are not available in reality. Luis Robert is a guy that other teams would really want, but he's under contract for so
I just
long.
want
It's
to
not
put
going to happen.
something. He was not in the top 6 as a finalist for the All-Star game. The top 6 outfielders in that's a shame. He deserves to be in that, but he'll be in the All-Star game. But it'll be picked later on, a manager's choice kind of thing. But
Right.
anyway,
Yeah.
back to it.
He
Yeah,
will. He will.
the Giolito. Lot of talk about Tim Anderson. The problem there for all of these things for the White Sox, other than the fact that Rick Hahn would be making the decision and it'll be all screwed up, instead of getting the best prospects from other teams, they'll get the dregs. But the problem comes in, there's nobody to replace him. If you're Cleveland, oh yeah, we got 11 more starting pitchers, so we can trade one of these. If you're Chicago, there's not a starting pitcher in the system, not one.
No.
Where do you go for shortstop? Your prized prospect played his first game this week of this season, and he's years away, at least 2 or 3 years away. So Montgomery's not going to be a choice to go into shortstop.
Yeah, I mean Montgomery's still only 21. He's young. He's
I mean,
going to be up to the big leagues for a while. Yeah,
but he's not. He's 2 or 3 years away. So you're in this same situation. Andrus can handle it defensively. Isn't hitting anything at all. Maybe Zach Remillard put it in there.
Well, and Andrus is one of the names thrown out there for trade bait, but I just don't know who would want him. Why you would want Elvis Andrus?
He's been talking. He did an interview just a few days ago saying, well, and Tim also did an interview revealing all his off the field problems and talking all about it. But that could have a lot to do with why he basically stinks in all aspects of the game right now. But he's saying, well, I'm a shortstop and I expect to get shortstop money. He's not really a shortstop. I just wrote a piece, which will be up about the same time this is, looking back at White Sox shortstops through history. He's the only who are more than a year or two, guys who held it for a while, going back to Alexei and Ozzie, and of course Aparicio. So he's the only one who stunk defensively. I mean, none of them were negative. I used RTOT just because you need to use something. And that's a kind of overall picture. And that also, they've been able to go backwards to 1953 to use stats to develop that. The only other one, this is interesting, who was negative was Bucky Dent. Bucky Dent with the White Sox for 4 years was horrible defensively, horrible, as bad as Tim, same -5 per year average. He went to the Yankees, and from the first year on, was a defensive superstar. And I commented that maybe the Yankees have coaches or something.
Well, it's quite possible.
It's not like he gradually got better with the Yankees. He went from like a -12 with the White Sox to a +20 with the Yankees just overnight.
Yeah, they talk about Tim Anderson coming to LA as well, and I have managed to calm people's excitement at that possibility because at first people are like, "Oh, we could get Tim Anderson." I'm like, if you want a 260 guy who doesn't take walks, can't field, and hasn't hit a single home run in
and
2023.
and used to hit 15 or so a year.
I think he's had
Yeah,
years where he got to 20. I mean, it's just insane that he has not put between him and Benintendi finally got one to go out, but Benintendi, famously now the most expensive contract in White Sox history, and we are paying a lot of money for one home run. Between Tim Anderson and Andrew Benintendi, we are paying a lot of money for one home run. And Benintendi's a solid left fielder, but you're not really paying for defense if you're paying a left fielder. That's a guy designed to take up space. You only notice a left fielder really if they're really bad,
when
which
it's a
is the
Lloyd
case with our other
or
left
Vaughn.
fielders. Yeah. Uh, but it's just absurd. And the idea that anyone would give up anything valuable for Tim Anderson at this point, I think, is delusion as well. He's just not putting up
Yeah,
the numbers.
I don't
Strikes
I don't
out a
think getting
ton,
much.
doesn't walk. You're not going to
You know,
get anything for him.
I'm not a homers guy. I'm not a big believer in the home run unless you're just totally bashing. But I think other things are more important, particularly with the new rules. Speed is. Athletic just did a piece this week talking about how the Cardinals, who are atop the National League West of all things, have absolutely maximized speed. They lead the
You mean the
majors.
Diamondbacks?
I mean, I'm sorry, Cardinal football and
Yeah,
basketball. Yeah, the
yeah.
Diamondbacks have put St. Louis up there. Yeah, they lead the majors in taking the extra base, that kind of thing. Oh, it's speed now. You got and the White Sox, for being mediocre in home runs, never get on base. And then the speed is bad. They're 46 or 22nd in stolen bases out of 30 teams with 46 of them.
And I realize we have a handful of guys that run like they've got pianos on their backs, but the fact that we only have that we're 22nd in stolen bases with the speed of some of these guys is pretty embarrassing. I mean, you have to get on first base to steal second base, and we don't do that. You have to get on second base to steal third base, and we rarely do that. So it makes the opportunities few and far between. But other teams, I mean, the Diamondbacks are the perfect example. On paper, our talent is as good as the Diamondbacks. We should be up there with the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks are playing in a much harder division, and they are utilizing every aspect of the game to win ball games. They're young, they're fast, they're playing smart. Clearly, great managing going on in Arizona right now. It is truly embarrassing to be 22nd in stolen bases when you have guys like Anderson, Benintendi, Luis
Robert
Robert.
Robert
Uh,
is the big one.
Robert is not stealing bases. There are so many times where,
And the guy who gets the bases stolen is the one who's 105 years old, Andrus, because he's smart and knows what to do and how to do it.
yeah, I
But
mean, stolen bases should be fairly common right now. I mean, we're seeing such a huge uptick in stolen bases, and it's really pretty easy to do. There's only a couple catchers where you still should kind of stay put. As everyone has learned, Yasmani Grandal's not one of them. You should just run anytime you're on base with Yas behind the plate. But it is really ridiculous that we don't seem to be utilizing these new rules in any way, shape, or form. And I'm not saying that that lands on Grifol, but that kind of lands on Grifol because we have some guys who should be stealing bases, and they're clearly not getting the sign to steal bases. I doubt they're just ignoring stolen base signs, but they're not going for it. And to see Luis Robert get on first base and not steal second base is ridiculous with the larger bases and the new throwover rules. He should absolutely be stealing on most pitchers and catchers in Major League Baseball. This team just has no tenacity right now, no drive,
and
no.
you're going to get you try more steals. You're going to get thrown out on occasion. And the Sox are very good at not getting thrown out, actually. But you can't. The stolen base is the easiest way to get to second. I mean,
But that's the thing.
if your
There,
success rate is 80%, no other thing you can do gets you to second base 80% of the time. Nothing.
No, nothing you do in any aspect of the sport gets you 80%. I mean, this is a game where if you fail 7 out of 10 times at the plate, you're having a heck of a year. I mean, the idea that you've got an 80% chance of getting to second base when you're on first base means you should be running every single time. Every single time, with the exception of, Vaughn and Eloy and Sheets and, you know,
Grandal.
Grandal, and well, now that we're listing them all.
Yeah, I mean it's a very slow team, but there are a few guys who are best. But we probably should go on. We're probably about break time. We come back and talk about trades because they're probably going to be emptying some out.
Yes, so we will take our break and we will be right back on Sharing Socks. Welcome back to Sharing Socks. The first half was all positives and joy. So this half will focus on some of the other things that could be going on that maybe aren't so great. Yeah, trades. I mean, our farm system is as depleted essentially as a farm system can be. I mean, we have absolutely nothing to offer, so we really can't be buyers at this deadline. So it is time to get rid of anyone and everyone that we can. We are not a true team in contention. There's no outlook that says, oh, if we don't trade this year, next year will be better. In fact, it looks like we would just sit in a puddle of mediocrity or worse for the coming years if we don't sell everything. I was going to say sell the farm, but we don't have a farm. We need to get rid of Major League Baseball players. I don't think anybody should be off limits. I think even the guys we have under good deals moving forward, team-friendly deals, I think they should all be up for grabs. I would support a full rebuild at this point, which will go horribly wrong. But I would love the idea of at least trying to do it.
If there's a rebuild, it comes under Jerry Reinsdorf and Ken Williams and Rick Hahn, which is it's just stupid that just be so incompetent. Now, it's easier for you to say long term, another 7-year drought. You're 36. I'm
Correct.
76. A 7-year drought takes me into where, if I'm alive, I may not know what a baseball is. So I would prefer that they not sell everything out, but they got to do something. And of course, they're not going to go for big free agents next year. They're not going to be on Ohtani. That's the Dodgers are getting Ohtani, and maybe the Yankees will be in on the bidding, and the Mets will bid. Giants might.
There's a ton of teams that could be in on Ohtani, and I will safely say the White Sox are absolutely not one of them. There's no way that after Benintendi's $77 million deal or whatever it was, they're just going to jump to $500 million for the next one, which is probably what Ohtani's going to get from somebody. He's probably
certainly be over 4.
Yeah, he is quite possibly going to be the first half billion-dollar player, and honestly deserves to be so. Everyone loves him. We live in Los Angeles, where Ohtani kind of plays, and his fan base is international. People come from all over the world to see him play in Anaheim. Imagine if he was playing for the Dodgers or the Giants, a real franchise, successful franchise.
Although, the Angels are doing a lot better this year.
However, that is
they could buy Giolito because they really need pitching.
As I will admit, I have become for my local team a Dodger fan, and I will say this is the dream scenario for the Dodgers. If the Angels were not in contention, the Dodgers would have a way harder time because the Dodgers have the number 3 farm system in all of baseball, and anyone getting rid of Ohtani knows that they're getting everything. So, and the Dodgers would be hesitant to give up the 3rd best farm system in baseball, even for Ohtani. But the fact that the Angels
you're talking about as a rental for this summer.
As a rental, yeah. So I would say that the best case scenario was that the Angels overachieve in the first half because they're not going to win the West. They're most likely not going to make the playoffs. But for the Angels to say we're not going to trade him because we're in contention, that's a dream scenario for the Dodgers, for the Giants, and for New York. Because now it's just money, and those teams have money. So, and with a couple of them, they have room next year, salary wise. It's a dream scenario. It's a nightmare scenario for the Angels, even though they think like, oh, if we make it, we'll possibly get to keep Otani if he gets to see what the playoffs are like. He ain't getting to see what the playoffs are like this year. He and Mike Trout, not in the AL West, where you've got a Rangers team that is pretty exceptional. You've got an Astros team that's always going to be hanging in there. You've got a Mariners team that.
Hold it just a second. The
Sure.
White Sox did win a game from the Rangers. Yes, it took a phenomenally awful call by the New York Review people for that to happen. But it did happen.
It did happen technically. You're right. You're right. We did win one game against them. But no, I think we will not be in the market for any of the big free agents. I don't know why we would even be looking that way. So I personally believe we should get rid of anyone and everyone that we possibly can. I would love to get rid of Tim Anderson, even for the very meager return that we'll get for him at this point.
I don't know that they can. Face of the franchise, Southside Chicago, and he's your only black player.
But he's almost not the face of the franchise anymore. That's the thing. And that's why I'm big on selling that contract, because Tim has fizzled out in a way where he is not even the face of this franchise anymore. People are not excited about Tim Anderson. Tim Anderson does not seem to be in the forefront of anything anymore. He has really sort of taken a back seat in terms of leadership and in terms.
I was going to say he's not the spirit guy. He was the team's spirit. He was. He's not this year.
He absolutely was. I would never argue that. Even when Jose Abreu was around, Tim Anderson was the pumped up guy. He was the guy we're like, yes, that's our guy. That guy is the White Sox. He and Abreu are the guys. Of course, they never really got it done together either all that much. But he has really become not the face of this franchise, which leads me to my next point, which is that there is no face of this franchise. Your closest thing right now is Giolito, who I think is as good as gone already. And I think really wants to be gone at this point. He is certainly seeing that over the next few years, he's not going to the playoffs. They're not going to be good. He's probably starting to get that itch. I call it the White Sox itch, which is these guys who say, I want to play it for the White Sox forever, and then they realize a few years in that they're probably never going to go to the playoffs again if they stay with the White Sox. I think he is as good as gone. Tim would be as good as gone, except he's so bad right now that I don't know what you could get for him. And I'm not sure getting rid of him, because we don't have anyone who can really cover for him if he's gone. We don't have a leadoff hitter. We don't have a shortstop. So he's a tough guy to get rid of in multiple ways, but I think they really should get rid of him if they can. I think Tim's tenure with the White Sox has completely fizzled. I don't think he's happy. I don't think he's having fun. I don't think he's going to be an energetic leader at any point moving forward. I would also get rid of any of the good contracts we have moving forward. I would get rid of Benintendi if they can. I would get rid of Dylan Cease if they can. I wouldn't get rid of Luis Robert, because if you get rid of Luis Robert, you have nobody. But Luis Robert's the one guy you could get an absolute haul for right now. That being said, it's not worth it.
The one area where there actually are more than enough people, because Rick Hahn is stupid and creating a team, is the DH / first base / whatever other position you throw him into group. And the guy who I think you could go high on, would do very well on right now, who I really don't think is going to be as good in the future, and I hope I'm wrong if he stays or wherever he goes, he's a good guy, is Berger.
Yeah.
Jake Berger it's creaming the ball times, although I think he's 2 for his last 18 and 4 for his last 30 or something. So they found out something about him on the way to pitch him, but still somebody will want that muscle. He's an okay third baseman. he's not good, but he's not as bad as he was.
Yeah,
He's
but
learning there.
he can play the position on days where he's not DHing if you need to rest
Yeah,
your
yeah,
usual
and
third baseman.
you can move him to first. So here's a guy, great power, good guy, good energy, actually can steal a base. He looks like he couldn't roll to a base.
Surprisingly good runner, and in a lot of ways, the hardest working player on the White Sox right now. I mean, he is hustling on every play. He hits a routine ground ball. I mean, his name's Jake Burger. He looks like a burger, but he really runs hard down that first baseline. I mean, I have been really enjoying watching Jake Burger. I agree with you that this is not a lasting thing necessarily, but I'm not going to write it off as potentially being a lasting thing. Jake Burger has been the sort of one cool new thing happening for the White Sox right now. And of course, when we heard Berto from the West Side's rant, he talked about how our only good hitter right now is Jake Burger. I think that is a little bit of an exaggeration because Luis Robert is capable of hitting the ball to outer space still. But
And
Burger is
Aloy is a very good hitter.
yeah.
And
Burger is a
that's
guy
another.
you could
If
sell
you don't want to
high
get rid
on.
of Burger, you put Aloy out there. Or Vaughn, frankly. You somebody in that group, certainly Sheets, somebody in that group can go without. Suddenly, we got a huge hole that we got to fill with nobody.
I mean, two of them. Two of them. I think if you're talking about Burger, Jimenez, Vaughn, and Sheets, two of them can go. Two of them can go. You should try to get rid of two of those guys. We've got that. We talk about this all the time. We have our slew of DH first basemen. Why? Why do we have so many? Get rid of two of them. I'd be fine if you got rid of three if it got us some decent prospects, because there's just nothing brewing if we do not make some moves as a seller at this deadline. And I'm not sure that we will be.
One category that we didn't get into was relief pitchers. The only one who there's not at least an option for next year, I think, is Renato Lopez, but he's been pretty awful.
Completely lost his stock.
One who
completely lost his
the,
trade
the
stock.
Dodgers and the Mariners both have serious relief problems, and they're both Mariners trying to contend. The Dodgers definitely in contention, and I'm sure other people do. Graveman has been pitching very well.
Yeah.
That's one. Kelly's been on and off. Somebody might want Kelly because he could be brilliant. Then the next time out, he's awful. Graveman's been consistently very good. I think you could get something pretty decent for him, and people in contention need relievers.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now you'll get more for Graveman than you probably deserve for Graveman. I think Graveman is solid, has been pitching very well, of course. He absolutely should not be a White Sox player at the end of the trade deadline. You have to get rid of Kendall Graveman because people give up way too much for relief pitchers when they're desperate, and there are teams that are absolutely desperate right now for relief pitching. It would have been nice if Lopez had shown any sign of still being good, but he has no trade value at this point. I agree with you on Kelly. I think somebody will want Kelly just because he does seem to still have something left in the tank. It comes and goes, but when it's there, it's really impressive. And he can eat up a couple innings mid-game for you. As we've seen, because our pitchers remain incredibly inefficient. But we should, I guess, at least shout out briefly to Lance Lynn for the 16 strikeout performance, which happened. He did not get the win. In fact, we ended up losing a 16 strikeout game by 4 runs, which is embarrassing and tells you everything you need to know about the 2023 White Sox. But what a game. What a game. I mean, it was fun to see him in the zone like that. Lance Lynn, who I certainly don't think of as a 16 strikeout guy, had everything working, including a very impressive curveball going for the day.
Oh, remember we when he first used that curve early in this year ago, we talked about it at length. He got a curveball. Where the hell did he get a curveball? Where'd that come from? And people were missing it all over. And it seems like between then and now, he did not have any feel for it. You know, he threw it once or twice and it wasn't going anywhere near what he wanted to do, or it was going to row Q. but yeah, it was really impressive the other night. He's so yeah. I mean, if he comes back, that's good for the team. But it's good for a lot of things.
I personally think they should have left him in to let him try to get to 20. They took him out after the bunt, which, in my opinion, I was like, it doesn't make sense because that's not an out, so he still has a chance at 20 strikeouts. Yes, he was at 113 pitches, but I don't see why you don't just let Lance Lynn throw up to 150 or 200. What are you trying to do? Save him? Who cares? He's going to run out of gas next month anyway. So let him throw it all now. Give him this big chance to do it. I didn't like that they took him out, even though, of course, everything logical says you take him out at 113 pitches. But it would have been nice to see him have a chance to really go for it. I really don't understand why you send him out for the eighth and then take him out after one pitch when it was just a bunt hit. It's not like he had a no-hitter going or a perfect game going. But yeah, kudos to Lance. That was fun to watch. That was the highlight, although we lost the game, which just tells you everything you need to know. When the Dodgers had a rookie come up last week who threw 6 no-hit innings, and the Dodgers ended up losing that game. And, the Lance Lynn thing felt very comparable. If you have your starting pitcher come out, do something great, and then no run support, and the bullpen can't get it done. So kudos to Lance. I don't really think this is going to be some major turnaround where we see ace Lance Lynn back at it, but it was very exciting to watch. That was the absolute highlight of being a White Sox fan over the last couple weeks. Before we sign off today, though, let's look at moving forward. So we've got Boston at home. Boston is one of those teams that if they were in any other division, or if they were in our division, I should say, would probably easily be in first place.
By 20 games.
But they are in that brutal AL East, which currently is all teams that probably should go to the playoffs. Some of them will not because that's not how it works. But Boston, I don't anticipate an intensely successful series against the Red Sox. Giolito, though, could get it done tonight. I could certainly see that happening. Then they're going to come out here to Anaheim after that, which I will probably try to attend next Wednesday night for the Giolito and Ohtani game. That is the one that seems to be
Cheap
the
tickets,
most promising. Let me look right now. Tickets as low as $4.
Wow.
Which also tells you that the Angels fan base is not sold that their team has turned it around either. If you can get $4 tickets on an Ohtani night, that's pretty absurd. But that's the game to watch there. So Boston at LA, and then we go to Oakland.
Hallelujah.
I know, but you never know. I'm not sitting here thinking, oh, we'll get 3 wins in Oakland. It's a series we could win, but I'm not sure we're that much better than the 20-win Oakland A's right now, even though they're intentionally trying to lose in that franchise. I think this could be a really rough week for the White Sox. I'm not including Oakland in that because we're a little over a week out from that, but the Red Sox and then coming to Anaheim, I think it's going to be a tough week. I think this could be a week where we lose 5 of those 7 games. And
I'm thinking, was it 4 games in LA?
I believe it is. Yeah. Yeah. We got 4 in LA. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It could be 5, either 3, and maybe they could split in LA, maybe 1 and 2. Anyhow, who knows?
In that time, you've got Giolito throwing twice and Cease throwing once. So there are opportunities to win games there. But I certainly don't think this is going to be the week that things turn around for the White Sox. There's just no way. Boston is better, and Anaheim is better, which is a weird thing to ever say ever about the Angels. But they're better than the White Sox. So I don't have a lot of hope moving forward. But before we sign off, do you have any final thoughts?
No, there's just so little the final thought about.
I know. We will be back next week, and I'm sure the trade talks will be a little more intensified, although that will still put us a month out from the deadline. So I don't think there will be any major moves between now and then. But thanks so much for listening. Hopefully, we come back next week talking about our magical 7-game winning streak.
There we
But
go.
if not, it will be a little more typical day when we see you again here on Sharing Socks.